Welcome, everybody, back to Friar Talk. Today, we're going to be talking about some potential trades that could happen for the Padres, both in terms of guys that could be traded away and also guys that could potentially be targeted from the Padres. As we know, they're looking for starting pitching. So there's a bunch of guys that we're going to kind of discuss as potential options there. I'm recording on my phone today. I do not know what's happened with my Wi-Fi. It just apparently does not work anymore. So we tried to start a little bit earlier and it was just not working. So I don't know how long I'll be recording off my phone, but it is what it is. Still pumped to talk about these guys. But Chase, I don't know if you have seen this yet. We have not really discussed this, us two, but apparently Jake Cronenworth and Ha Seong Kim could be on the block as the Padres are looking to get a DH first base kind of type. But they want that guy to be able to play first base. They don't really believe in having an everyday DH. At least that's what it seems like. So the idea is you would bring in a power bat, bring back a guy like Brandon Drury, or have Will Myers kind of platoon with Joey Gallo, as we were talking a little bit about, and something like that at first base, and then you would move either Ha Seong Kim or Jake Cronenworth. And basically the idea is that you could upgrade in the starting pitching department. So let's talk about the two guys that could potentially be leaving on the Padres side. I find this very, very interesting just to see like kind of how it would look like. But let's talk about Ha Seong Kim, because Ha Seong Kim is a guy that we have all grown to love as Padre fans, and he only has 1 year left on his deal. He makes $7 million. He's easily worth that. He improved a lot this past season, but there's a big question mark now of, is he going to be back in a Padre uniform not only next year, not next year, but the season after? So, in my opinion, it almost becomes a kind of a crossroad where it's like, do you want to trade this guy or do you want to extend him? Which extending him would be a little weird now because you have Bogaerts, you have Jackson Merrill coming up, you have Jake Cronenworth controlled. So, do you think it makes sense for the Padres to trade away Ha Seong Kim? Not only do you think it makes sense, do you like the idea of them doing that?
It makes sense, but I don't like it. I mean, we all know that the fan base loves Ha Seong Kim. The clubhouse absolutely loves him too. Whenever Ha Seong Kim does good, the entire team does good. I mean, Manny learned Korean just so he can talk, like say phrases to Ha Seong Kim. I mean, if that doesn't say something about his character and his presence in the clubhouse, I don't know what does. I mean, that's the biggest example you can think of. Every time he's up to bat, you hear the crowd. It is just an echo of Ha Seong Kim over and over and over again. It makes sense, though. I mean, you have Xander Bogaerts signed for the next 11 years. You have Tatis signed for the next 12 years, I believe. Where are you going to put Tatis? Is he going to be considered an outfielder for the rest of the time? Is he just going to be there while Bogaerts is in his prime and can play short? And then when Bogaerts gets over, does he slide over to second? Do you have Bogaerts at second and Tatis at short right now? And that's what you do, and you move Jake over to first. But if they go, hey, Tatis, guess what? You're going to be a center fielder now. We're going to upgrade our right field. Grisham, you're gone. Sorry, unfortunate. We're going to use you as trade bait to get another arm. I'm fine with that. A lot of teams are high on Trent Grisham. Who said, we're not talking about trading Tatis. I was really freaked out for a second. No, Tatis is probably going to get moved to the outfield, the center field, trade Grisham. He's got a lot of upside. And then you go and sign another guy. You either use him to trade for a pitcher or trade for a power bat, and then you go sign another pitcher or so. Absolutely. I do think Jake probably has a bigger market. He's on a cheaper contract. He's got a couple more years of control. He can play second base, gold glove second base. He can play gold glove first base. He's not necessarily your archetype of a first baseman in the power department, but he'll still get you between 10 and 20 home runs in a year, depending on if he can figure it out at the plate. I know he had a little bit more struggles last year, but I don't want to get rid of Ha Seong Kim. I like Ha Seong Kim. $7 million is a steal. He put up a 4 WAR last year. He's only gotten better each year. And in the time of you're trying to win a World Series, I think you need one of those guys that he can be an X factor, and he absolutely can be. He's an X factor on defense. And if he comes around with the bat to even a slightly above average hitter, he can easily put up a 5 WAR season, and that would be huge on the Padres. I mean, having Jake at first base playing gold glove defense, having Kim at second with a 750 OPS would be absolutely insane with his glove. And then Xander and Machado. You got Tatis in the outfield. You have Juan Soto. And the only real hole is, okay, who's going to be our right fielder? Which, if you wanted to, I saw a floating around on Twitter. I don't know how many of you guys are going to be fans of this. It was basically, they called it the Los Gallos situation. And you'd have Myers and Gallo platooning right field, and Myers would hit against lefties, and then Gallo would hit against righties. And last year they had a 804 OPS each against Gallo versus righties, Myers versus lefties, which 804 is pretty solid platoon for right field. Both of them, well, Gallo doesn't know right field and Pecco, but Myers has had experience there. Neither of them would be everyday players, or if they were, one would be DHing, one would be playing right field, and then worst case scenario, they can also platoon at first, which gives you a lot of flexibility with your lineup.
Yeah, and we're looking into trading potentially Kim or Cronenworth, and it's kind of like, dude, those are like the two fan favorites. Like, you don't want to trade either of those guys. And when Xander Bogaerts was signed, the idea was, okay, Xander Bogaerts is getting signed to play short, Kim's going to play second, and Jake's going to slide to first. But now we've kind of seen, like, if they do go after a first base type, they don't really want him to DH. So I really wonder what that's going to look like. I like your idea, like your hypothetical more of, you're going to move Tatis to the outfield, you're going to trade Grisham. Whatever they do, though, my thought at least, I don't think they're going to rush to do it. I don't think we're going to see them make one of these trades. Like, I think that they will go and sign a guy. Like, say they want to bring back Brandon Drury, right? But they want him to be their first baseman. They don't really know how they're going to move Cronenworth and Kim around, or people in the outfield, right? Like, they're not really sure. I think they might sign Brandon Drury and then wait to trade one of Cronenworth or Kim until either spring training, until Tatis is back, until the deadline, something like that. But also, if you do that, then on Kim's side, you're losing a ton of value because Kim is going to have half a year by the time the deadline rolls around. So all of a sudden, you lose a lot of value in terms of trading him. I don't want them to trade either. I think it makes a lot more sense because, I mean, the Padres need to go get starters, at least one, preferably two. And they have to have a lefty, and there's Seth Lugo and Wade Miley are like the only guys available outside of Carlos Rodon, but it doesn't seem like Rodon's really in play. So I say you keep it kind of how it is. You bring in Brandon Drury, and then you see how it plays out. And you see who becomes expendable once Tatis is back, once Drury's there, once Cronenworth is at first. And you kind of see how that whole situation plays out. And maybe Drury DH a little bit. And the cool thing about Drury is Drury could be a DH, but he could also be a utility player as well at the same time, where a lot of guys that get signed to play DH or get signed to be the DH, they're exclusively DHs and they don't do anything else. And it's like, you can throw them at first, but like you don't want to. Or it's like you can throw him in a corner outfield spot, but you don't want to. Well, Drury can play basically second, first. He's played third a little bit, let Manny rest and get some DH days. I think that makes sense. And I don't think we have to take it as like, if the Padres go and sign a DH, like a guy to be their DH, that he also has to play on the field every day. Like they can't have a guy that's like technically your DH, because to start the year you're not gonna have Tatis. So there's also that element of it as well. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, it's definitely an interesting one. You bring up the kind of Myers Gallo thing. I feel like no one really wants to see that. But like you look at numbers wise and you're like, all right, like that's okay. Like that is going to work out, especially for a platoon thing. I just don't think the Padres really have to do that yet. I think they can wait a little bit. And I think they would probably prefer to have Drury, where you could also have Drury and Myers, or you could have Drury and Gallo or something like that. So they'll probably sign one of Myers or Gallo to be like a bench piece, or a different guy to be a bench piece. But I don't think you have to trade Cronenworth or Kim. With that said, though, Chase, if you have to trade one, say that that's their ideas, you have to have Drury play first base. He's going to be your everyday first baseman, and you have to trade one of them. Would you rather keep Ha Seong Kim or keep Jake Cronenworth?
I think you have to keep Cronenworth just because Kim is going to be a free agent. He's going to demand some money. Jake Cronenworth, you had a couple more years of control. He has a little bit more flexibility. He's going to be one of the few lefty bats in the lineups outside of Soto. you kind of have to keep him. We have a plethora of righties. Cronenworth can also brings the same defensive prowess. If not, he has a little bit better of a bat, and he's a lefty, and he's going to be cheaper. So I think you got to keep Cronenworth. As much as I don't want to get rid of Kim, you'd have to keep Cronenworth, which if you're in a position where you have to trade either of them, I don't think you are. I mean, you have plenty of options. You just need a couple pitchers and you're solid. I mean, if you want to run it back with Grisham, you can run it back with Grisham, but you don't have to. You have guys that are cheaper options that you can take a gamble on. Like you can sign Myers and Gallo to probably like 10 million a year each, and you'll probably get 30 home runs out of both of them combined, if not a little bit more. Gallo hit 19 home runs last year, and that was a down year. He's going to be playing in Petco, where really got shortened up a little bit. I think he's a good fit for a right field. I think he's great for a platoon guy. Hey, you're going to face all the righties. You're not going to face any lefties. We're just going to focus on putting you at your best and where you're going to succeed at. And Myers are going to do the same. You're going to hit against lefties. Gallo, you're going to hit against righties strictly. I think you get them on a deal. They'll provide you with 30, 40 home runs combined from the DH and right field position. And I think that's all you need. That's basically all the power the Padres needed. And you get them hot during the playoffs. That's an unstoppable duo.
And that's always the question with Myers and Joey Gallo, of course, is the streakiness, which also plays in a role of like you could platoon him. You also have Azokar off the bench as an outfield option. And currently you have Trent Grisham and Tatis as outfield options as well. So like you have a plethora of guys that you can put right there and kind of wait for Tatis to come back and see how it plays out. But I do really hope that the kind of rumors that we've seen about potentially trading away Jake Cronenworth and Ha Seong Kim do not come to fruition. I think that if you trade Ha Seong Kim, it would feel like such a gut punch. I personally think Ha Seong Kim is one of those guys that is like, you probably just extend him and maybe you end up trading him later or whatever, but I think you want to extend him because I think next year's we should expect that to be his best year in the big so far. Like you would expect that, right? Because it's the third year for KBO players. It's always like not always, but pretty consistently. It's like year one, it takes them, they struggle quite a bit. And then year two, they start making some adjustments. And then year three is where it's like, okay, that's who they're going to be. That's typically how a lot of guys have played after they've played, their whole lives in the KBO because they kind of got to adjust to that velocity. We've already seen, last year Kim looked a lot more comfortable with high velocity at the plate because his rookie year, he looked bad. Like he did some other things great, but he could not hit high velocity fastballs whatsoever. So I have a lot of faith in him to continue to play better. So I would actually rather you extend him with Jake. You have 4 more years of control with Jake. I don't think it makes any sense at all to trade him unless someone really views him as like, okay, yeah, give us Jake Cronenworth and, we'll give you an ace back as like, Jake Cronenworth is like the main piece in that deal. That's the only way I could see that happening. And even then, I feel like the Padres might be a little bit reluctant to do something like that. Though it does make a little bit of sense if you did trade him for like an ace with, control or something like that. But I don't know. I just don't want to see it happen. And I feel like you feel the same way, right? You're muted.
Yeah, I've talked about it the whole time. It'd be like trading away Franmil Reyes again, where he was the crowd favorite. Everybody in the dughouse loved him. And then as soon as he left, they were like a hole in the dugout. They weren't as energized. They didn't look like they were having as much fun playing baseball. Sometimes you just need one of those guys that's a really good clubhouse guy that everybody gathers around and gets electrified by when they do good. And Ha Seong Kim is that person. Yes, Tatis is that person too. However, he's also going to be missing, I've heard, is it 20 games? I've seen as low as 12. I've seen as high as like 23, 24 games.
I think it's 20-something.
20-something? All right. Which he is too, but more people and the fans gather around Ha Seong Kim than Tatis right now just because of what happened last year. Everybody loves Tatis, but everyone's going to hold some frustration towards him because of the motorcycle accidents, because of the PEDs. He's going to get trashed upon across the league at different ballparks, getting booed and stuff. So you're going to need one of those guys that is a little ray of sunshine in Ha Seong Kim. So I don't want to get rid of him. it doesn't make sense this year.
Yeah, and I'm there with you. So I do want to talk about some other trade options in terms of like pitchers that the Padres could be going after. But before that goes down, I wanted to get your thoughts on two different deals. First, let's talk about Thor to the Dodgers. I am a little bit intrigued to see what you think about that. Just because the Dodgers always have guys where it's like, oh, look, this reclamation project, let's turn him into a stud. Do you think that's the case with this deal? Like, because I saw it and I was like, he hasn't been good, but I don't like that. Like, I don't like that at all. If that's like your low key move that you're pulling.
I don't know. Like, as much as I like Noah Syndergaard, seems like he's been a lost cause the last 2 years. However, I don't think there's not a lot of pressure on Syndergaard to be an ace. They still have they have Dustin May, they have Julio Urias, they brought back Kershaw. They still have a stacked rotation. And Syndergaard's just asking to be basically a 5-star. And with that pressure not being there, with the chance that the Dodgers have of reclaiming past glories in players or reclaiming them to be star players just in themselves, we've seen it multiple times. Low-key terrifying. I mean, if Syndergaard goes back to what he was as an early Met, that's too good of a rotation to like go against. I mean, we thought they were good last year, and if they fix Noah Syndergaard, things are going to get a little scary.
Yeah, and I agree with that too. I think that's kind of where I'm at with it. The only thing that I would bring up with the Dodgers is like I don't think he'll be expected at all to pitch a lot of innings. I think he's gonna basically max out at 5, maybe 6 an outing. So in terms of like innings pitched, last year he pitched 134. Obviously that's not really ideal if you're like a full-time starting pitcher, but remember he also kind of became a bullpen guy towards the end of the year. Not really in the regular season. He started 24 games. So he basically started the entire year, but that's not the same as when he was a Met and when he was having, 150, 180, 150, 197. Like those were his innings when he was pitching well on the Mets. I don't think he's going to get that up there in innings, but in terms of his performance and stuff and how he's going to look, I expect him to look pretty good. And that rotation will be pretty dirty. I think it's kind of a wash in terms of last year just because look at what the Dodgers pitchers posted last year. Like it's gonna be hard to like be a lot better than that. So that's kind of why I think it's a little bit of a wash there, just because I don't think Syndergaard's ever going to be able to be like pitching deep into games at this point. The other guy I wanted to bring up. Oh, go ahead. No, I know. That's what I'm saying.
What they did with Tyler Anderson.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I just don't think. I think it's like a wash. That's why. Like I think it'll be similar to like Tyler Anderson's numbers. I mean, dude, he had stupid good numbers last year.
Yeah,
so
they don't need their pitchers to go 7 innings. They just need them to go 5, 6. That's why Tony Gonsolin was in the Cy Young for so long. Gonsolin threw out maybe 5, 6 innings, but they were 1-run ball games, and then the bullpen closed it out. That's all they need.
No, and they consistently do that too. They consistently bring guys in to pitch like 5 or 6 innings and not really get stretched out that much. Which it does seem it kind of comes back to bite them, I guess, later on in the year. Like these guys, I don't know. It kind of feels like that in the playoffs sometimes, but I don't know. I think it's a really good move by the Dodgers and one that's going to get extremely overlooked before the season starts. The other move, of course, the big move. We talk about this Dodgers move first, but in the division, we were talking about Carlos Correa potentially being a Padre. We were talking about him potentially being a Dodger. He ends up going to the Giants. I tweeted this out earlier. I said, how afraid are you of the Giants? And I don't know if you saw this, the responses, Chase, but basically everyone said between 0 and 2 or 0 and 3. And like everyone was like, yeah, I'm not afraid of the Giants at all. Which I don't think like the Giants are going to be better than the Padres or anything like that. But I think they're a borderline playoff team, which we see like anytime you have a borderline playoff team, they can knock a team off in the playoffs. That happens all the time. So I wouldn't say I'm like super concerned about them being better in terms of the regular season. But the Giants, like I don't really know like what they're doing. But what were like your immediate thoughts on that deal?
It makes sense that they want to build around him. Like they brought Mitch Haniger in on a 3-year deal. They still have a couple solid guys left. I think they're betting on some prospects. Depends on who they bring back in the rotation. I don't think they bring back Rodon, but if they get a couple solid starters, they're not gonna be like terrifying to go against. However, the Giants always play the Padres well. That is the one thing. The Padres are not the Padres. The Giants are a very scrappy ball club. They always have been. They always will. They never win division, but all they need is that wild card spot, and they can go all the way. We have seen this over and over again. I think I'm 5 or 6. I may be like a little bit more scared of them than I guess the rest of the fan base is. However, we didn't think they were going to be all that in what was it, 2021 when they freaking stormed through. Yeah, no, I didn't think they were going to win 100 plus games, and they won what was it, 102, 104 games. No one had them at 100 wins, and everyone did what they needed to do. That's just the Giants. The Giants are a good ball club. They know how to get the most out of their players. And I think if they get a couple more solid pitching, they may not have like a true ace in the hole, but they don't need one. That's the scary part. Their ballpark is big enough so that the 81 games that they play at their ballpark, they're not going to give up a ton of home runs. They just know how to play scrappy baseball, and they always somehow make a solid team out of nothing. So I'm going to be a little more scared than the rest of the group.
I'm there with you. I think a 5 or a 6 is pretty fair. I would be very surprised if they end up finishing the season with more wins than the Padres necessarily. But I wouldn't be surprised if we look up and they're like a solid, strong wild card team that clinches a week or two before the season ends. Like that they're like consistently in. It's like, oh yeah, the Giants are definitely going to make the playoffs. I also find this deal interesting, and Isaac texted this in our group chat. But he said, hey, this kind of makes me feel like, reminds me a little bit of the Manny Machado deal for the Giants, or for the Padres, where it's like you're bringing in like your first guy, and then who's going to follow? Because the Giants were trying to get Judge as well. They were trying to get a top free agent and just kind of start kicking it off like that. The Giants are a pretty big market. San Francisco is a pretty big market. That's a huge team, especially when like your other team that's sitting right there is the A's, who spend nothing, and like people aren't really A's fans out there as much, like not nearly as much. So you're a huge franchise. You go and you get a guy in Correa to build around. Who's going to follow? Because we have seen quite a few teams do this and kind of have this blueprint where the Padres went and they got Machado. I guess you could say Hosmer, honestly, but I consider it Machado when it started. Hosmer that's a side note, but they go and they get Machado and they build around him, and then Tatis comes, and we keep seeing all these other pieces. They trade for the pitching, they do it, and they start really building a really strong team. Look at the Phillies. The Phillies did the same thing with Bryce Harper in the same year that the Padres did with Manny Machado, and you see that they get very far in the playoffs as well. The Rangers are trying to do that with a group of guys. I guess Seager is their first guy, but like we're seeing a lot of teams kind of have this like almost like the tactic of like we're going to get a superstar and we're going to slowly build around him. I think this is an example of the Giants doing that right now.
100%. And I would try to talk more about the Giants, but I honestly don't know their farm system that well. I don't know which guys are where, if they have any top prospects that are immediately about to come up. But it's one of those things where Machado signed, and then we got Tatis right away, and we started to be a really good ball club. I don't know if they have anyone new talent as Tatis in their farm system, but if they did, they're maybe a couple of years away from being a scary good ball club. I mean, if they get the pitching this year, they could easily make a wild card spot, especially with the extended teams. Let's look at this. Trade Kim and Campusano for Lopez or Luzardo. Replace Kim with Segura and go for Conforto. I don't know if we have enough money for that. I mean, I can't say that because Seidler has been spending money like crazy. I can't say that anymore. That used to be my excuse, and now I can't use it.
We can never say that again, ever.
I can't say that anymore. It feels weird. I am not used to it yet. I don't think you need to trade Kim and Campy for Luzardo. Pablo Lopez, yes. However, I'd go for Edward Cabrera out of that group. He's 24. He had a 3 ERA last year. He started 14 games. I like him a little bit more. He's going to have a few more years of control. Yes, it doesn't give you a lefty. I think we do need a lefty, and that's what Luzardo is. I'm scared of Luzardo's command issues and his injury history. He has all the stuff. I want to see him put it together, but at the same time, we already have one of those guys where his location's a little bit off. He has all the stuff and an injury history, and Adrian Morejon. I'd much rather see Motorhome's success than bringing in another guy and be like, okay, well, he can't start after 3 years of trying to figure that out. He's going to be another bullpen arm. We don't need another bullpen arm. We need a star.
Yeah, I'm there with you. So if you were going to rank the guys, then Lopez, Luzardo, and Cabrera, how would you rank them in like terms of how you want them, not how good they are, because that's a whole different story. I think there, because I think potentially all three of those guys are on the table for the Padres. I think you could have a deal built around Grisham. I think you could have a deal built around Kim as well, maybe Cron, maybe Campy too. I don't really know. I mean, the Marlins have a lot to build on their team, but it does seem like those three guys are potentially available. So if you had to pick, like, I would want this guy the most, I want this guy the second most, I want this guy the third most, how would you rank it? Because I personally feel like most people, almost everyone has Luzardo or Pablo Lopez at 1 and 2. I don't think you do though, Chase. I feel like you have Cabrera higher.
Hold on. I'm looking up how many years of control Edward Cabrera has real quick.
He's in pre-arbitration right now.
So what? He's got another 4 years.
More than that, I think. I think he has.
Lopez becomes an unrestricted free agent in 2025, which
so he's 2.
3 years, and he's making $2 million this year, which is not that much.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's only making $2 million, and he's
real good.
Really good. He had a little bit of a down year last year, but he's going to be fine. I think we have another 4 years of Cabrera if we went after him. So
Cabrera is the cheapest with the most control. Lopez is, I think, the second cheapest with the second most control, and then I think Luzardo is a little bit less. Or I think maybe Luzardo's in between them.
I think you go for Lopez right now. If you're looking for more of we are going to run out of starters. We are going to lose most of our guys after this year. We don't have other than Musgrove, we really don't have that many guys. You go Edward Cabrera, hopefully, because by the time 2 years have passed, he's still going to be in his prime. Pablo Lopez is in his prime right now. I think I go with Pablo Lopez 1, Cabrera 2, Luzardo 3. Pablo Lopez has been way too good the last 2 years. Outside of his slip up towards the end of last season, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, but I also think it's kind of weird too, because like I always wonder about this in baseball, and like obviously like your numbers kind of speak for themselves and stuff. But like if you're just playing where the games don't matter, it's like it's got to kind of be tough. It's got to be tough also when you're a Marlins pitcher, like all of those guys, and it's like you just get absolutely no run support. It's like you're probably gonna be a little bit mentally drained from that. I think I would probably. I think Luzardo would cost a lot. I think Lopez would probably be, I think maybe less than people think, even though I think he's a stud. I think he's really good. I still think he'd cost a lot to go and acquire, but how old is he right now? He's going to be 27 next year. That's ideal, man. Like, if you're going to make a trade, if you're going to trade a position player that's in MLB right now and build a package around that, I think Pablo Lopez is probably your guy. I did see a comment about Shane Bieber. We'll get to him in a second. We're definitely going to talk about him. But in terms of the Marlin guys, I think Lopez makes the most sense. I think if you are like trying to find a lefty in the trade market, I do think Luzardo makes a lot of sense. But the problem is it's the same thing with Morejon, like you said, where they always try to stretch out Morejon. They always try to make him a starter, and he gets hurt all the time. So unless they believe that Luzardo is going to be healthy and he's going to be able to put up 130, 150 innings, which isn't that crazy for a starter, but he's not done it yet, ever. So unless you're very confident in him being able to do that, I think Cabrera is probably at 2 as well, just because he's a little bit younger, cheaper, and probably is going to cost a lot less than Luzardo. So that's where I'm at with it, which is pretty much the same as you, and like with that caveat of like you do have to get a lefty. So I want to see what people in the chat were saying. People were talking about it. Yeah, the Marlins do have a ton of young arms. That's the thing. I mean, it's just I think that's why they're looking to move guys, because it's like, all right, we just have all these guys. What about Sandy? He would cost so much, right? Like that would be ridiculous.
They already said we're not trading Sandy.
They also extended him too, right?
Traded for him. No, they
Dude,
came
you
out and
wanted it so
said, we
bad.
are not trading Sandy. These are the 3 guys available. We are not trading Sandy. Oh my God, we should have traded for him when I said to, my God, I wanted Sandy so bad. So bad. And then he
Dude, have
signed
you
the
seen
5
his
years.
contract?
I don't want to talk about his contract. It is the biggest steal in baseball.
Dude, Sandy contracts, dude, it's crazier than Ozzy Albies. 5 years,
100%.
$56 million.
Oh, I thought it was 65, 56.
Yeah. So he has a
That's
base
such a
salary.
steal, man.
So last year he had a base salary of 3.5. This year 6 mil. Next year 9 mil. The next 2 years after that 17. And then in 2027 he has a club option for 21 mil when he's going to be 31. So they're just getting prime Sandy Alcantara for nothing. Yeah, they need to trade their pitchers, dude. They can just ride him. I mean, how many innings did he have last year? He pitched a lot of innings last year.
220?
220? Yeah, I think so. Let's see. I'm looking at it right now.
Sound right.
228. He's had back-to-back seasons. He's had back-to-back seasons making no money. 205 innings, 228 innings. So I guess if you're going to go for a home run guy, like you would want to get Alcantara, but there's no reason for them to trade him. He's one of those guys that, like you said, one of the best contracts for a team in baseball.
If you could, dude, that would be like in a very, very expensive. I think it would be rivaling Soto's sort of trade package because he's on a very team-friendly deal. He's eclipsed 200 innings twice in the past 2 years. He was just the Cy Young. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. How many complete games did he pitch? I'm looking right here. I don't think it has it.
9, wasn't it?
Dude, something stupid. Didn't he lose a complete game too? Didn't he lose 1-0 and he lost a complete game?
Yeah.
He allowed 1 run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the Marlins right there. That's why they need guys. That's when they need to get offense, and that's why making a trade for a Marlins pitcher, if you're willing to give up a bat, it makes a lot of sense.
6 games. Someone said 6.
Yeah, but
that's still
let's yeah, it really is. 6 complete games is nuts. But yeah, people were asking about Shane Bieber. So we bring up the Marlins pitchers. I think the guy that probably gets brought up in trade discussions the most outside of anyone on the Marlins, just because it's become clear that the Marlins are going to trade at least one guy, maybe 2, is probably Shane Bieber. Do you like the idea of adding him, though the price tag is probably going to be a little bit more?
I don't want to trade with the Guardians. I'm not going to lie to you. I wouldn't trade with the Guardians. I wouldn't trade with the Rays, and I wouldn't trade with the Mariners. Those are the 3 teams on my no trade list for the Padres because AJ Preller always seems to give up just solid guys for them, and they end up being a playoff team with all the guys we traded them for. So as much as I want Shane Bieber, that is a no, just because I don't want to trade with the Guardians. We always get fucked up whenever we trade with the Guardians. No. Guardians, Rays, and Mariners. Those are on our no trade list. Preller needs to learn from past mistakes.
I got to disagree about the Rays. I think we can keep trading with the Rays. We got the Rays on a couple of deals. I think we got them on the Snell deal, and I think we got him on the Tommy Pham trade, even though
Tommy
we really
Pham
just got
deal,
Jake.
yeah.
But those are the 2 big ones.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, they fleeced us on Trey Turner, but then they moved Turner. Oh, no, was that a 3-team deal? It might have been a 3-team deal.
That was a 3-team deal.
Yeah.
Was a 3-team deal.
So
Trey Turner went over to the Nationals.
Yeah, I didn't know if the Nationals deal was a corresponding one. But yeah, so for Shane Bieber, I mean, last year he pitched. He had exactly 200 innings, 2.88 ERA, barely over 1 WHIP, almost worth 3.5 WAR. I mean, he would immediately come in and be one of the best arms in the rotation. Probably put him at 1, right? He'd probably be your ace. He'd probably be your number 1 in theory, because I remember Mike Clevenger was supposed to be number 1 a while back. I'm with you, dude. I don't think trading for Shane Bieber is a move that the Padres should make right now. He doesn't have a lot of control. He has this year and next year. He's making $11 million this year. I think, a guy like Pablo Lopez that has a little bit more control. I think guys that have more control are a lot more valuable right now for the Padres, even if they're not quite as high caliber of an arm. Because for me right now, my thought is, and also like the other thing is like, a lot of these guys that we're bringing up aren't lefties because there's not really any lefties that are like on the market. So that's another thing that's kind of tough. But in terms of Bieber, I probably am leaning no, though. Like, if we traded for Shane Bieber, it's not like we're not going to be pumped. It's going to be like, dude, we just added Shane Bieber. This is crazy. Like, look at this rotation. Look at this lineup. Like, we're going to be pumped, but it is like that might be one where the deal goes through and you're like, there's better stuff on the table, where it's like, oh, Bieber doesn't look as good anymore. Now, you do have Ruben Abel was there when Shane Bieber was there, so there is kind of some crossover there. But we got sold on that for Mike Clevenger as well. Now, I think Clevenger's situation is just a little bit different just because he got hurt and then just kind of fell apart after the injury. But that's kind of my only thing. With Bieber, in 2021, he didn't pitch that much. He got hurt. But in 2019, non-COVID year, in 2019, he had over 200 innings then. And that was his second year in the league. So I don't think he's like necessarily like an injury-prone guy or anything like that. But all it takes is Tommy John one time, and this is almost like the exact same scenario with Clevenger. Like it looks like almost a repeat in terms of like numbers and everything, where it's like, oh, we're gonna get this guy, blah blah. He has this much control left. I think Clev had one more year left. But then for the Padres, you trade all these guys, and then you look at the Guardians starting lineup, which granted isn't that great, but you still look at it, and half of the team is Padres players, like actually. And you're like, dude, how did they get all? How is Austin Hedges is behind the plate now? Austin Hedges also is hitting like $150, so not really going to give him much credit there. But like, you give up a lot, like, so I don't know. You gave up Cal Quantrill, like that one ended up costing a lot. So I just don't know if it's the best thing. What are people in the comments saying? Are they pro Shane Bieber? I feel like most people would, but I also saw some people were like, I don't know,
hit and miss.
Yeah.
See, I also just don't want to trade for anyone. We need to build the farm system back up so that we can actually produce our own talent for, actually have some guys on cheap contracts. Money can only take you so far. That's where the Dodgers are different. The Dodgers spend money, but they also get a lot of guys that they develop that are great on their own. They have, Dustin May. They developed Julio Urias. They had Tony Gonsolin.
Walker
They
Buehler.
developed Bellinger before I don't know what happened to Cody Bellinger. They fixed Max Muncy. They had Justin. They fixed Justin Turner. I mean, they're good at developing their own guys, and that's where the Padres are lacking if they want to be a dynasty team. You can't keep trading away for talent. It can only take you so far. You have a finite, limited sources in your farm. And the more you try to trade for big guys, the less you can replenish it and the less talent there's going to be for guys to come up and make an impact. And my other beef is when you have these top prospects that when they're finally pushing the doors to the MLB, give them a legitimate chance. Can we see Campusano get some at-bats? Can we see him DH for the first 30 games or catch or DH for the first 30 games while Tatis is out? Let's see what he's got against MLB pitching. If you don't think he has,
I want to see Campy, dude. I really do. I think that's fair. I do think it's interesting because I'm also with you in some of that. Like, for instance, like in Bieber, for instance, like getting Shane Bieber. I don't think you need to go get a guy like that necessarily because I think you can go and you can.
Cost you did let's go.
Exactly. I think you can go add different pieces, and you're still going to have a ridiculously stacked team and potentially like the favorite to win next year. Probably the favorite in the NL, depending on who you get as your fourth starter. But you can still go get some solid arms. So you're saying don't trade guys, right? Like that's kind of your thought, and I'm there with you. I also will kind of say like in some cases I think it's fine to just trade away your farm, especially I think the fact that the Padres can't develop gives them more of a reason to trade away their farm. But I get your point. I get your point.
That sometime. I mean,
and I do hope it happens. I mean, we saw that today. They hired a guy from the Tigers to be potentially a hitting coach, but it seems like they're going to have multiple guys on the staff as hitting coaches this year, opposed to just like one guy. Let's recycle, which I think is huge. I think that's huge. So I do wonder if that'll happen. But with all this said, you said that you don't like the idea of going into the trading market or going into the trade market for a starting pitcher. Since you think that, in terms of pitchers that are still available, what would your plan be? Like if you could have a plan for how you're going to fill out this rotation, what would you do? Because I know my answer. It's pretty simple. You
Eovaldi
sign
and
Nathan
Miley.
Eovaldi and Miley. Yes, that is exactly that's what I want to see happen. Is it going to cost a decent amount? Yes, but we've seen that Siler doesn't really care about that. We know that the Padres farm is depleted. They don't need to go and trade Jackson Merrill and trade Dylan Lesko and do all of this. So in 2025, 2026, like when those guys are going to graduate, there's no one because they already have their team set up until that time. And then that's when you're going to need to start replenishing some of these guys to bring someone in like a Jackson Merrill to play second base or wherever he's going to play, right? If you just go, and you might have to end up trading them. You might have to do that. But at this point, you can sign Eovaldi. You can sign Miley. And if you do that, if you go sign just those two guys, you have 6 capable arms that can start. And you have Jake Room kind of as like an in-between guy. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, now you have a lot more, not a lot more spots. You have Ryan Weathers as kind of your wild card, but he's far away from ever pitching in a game at that point. Like he's like your 8th or 9th guy down. Like you don't really have to like be concerned of like, could Ryan Weathers have to pitch for a month? No, you don't have to think about that. But I think that's the best move is getting Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi does have some injury concerns. I like Wade Miley, but I think that combo of a free agent would be really good. And I think it would make the Padres so much better.
I see a lot of people saying, why not Waka? I think Waka is good too, but I like Eovaldi's potential more. How old is he going to be? He was born in 91, so he's going to be what? 31? 32? 32 next year. I wouldn't say none panned out. It's just that we never really gave them a chance. That's the one thing with the Padres. Like we had Mejia, and Mejia was supposed to be the top catching prospect, and we treated him like crap. We legit, okay, you're gonna be off the bat bench, and you are going to maybe start every 6th game, and those are going to be at bats. Try to succeed with them. We never had any, actually, because we've also had top prospects in our system and none panned out. We trade them away. We traded Trey Turner away. We traded Max Fried away. We traded Emmanuel Clase away. We traded, like, these guys are all top guys at their position now. We had the top talents in our system. We just didn't develop them.
Yeah, and also a lot of these guys actually end up being pretty sweet players. I mean, Ty France is a sick player. Like, Naylor's coming around. Kyle Quantrill's pretty good. Like, there's a lot of guys. So
Andreas Munoz.
But I think you're right. I think at some point too, like, I mean, you did develop Tatis. Like you didn't develop that many guys. But I think that the kind of idea for them is like, hey, like if we can land a superstar player, like we're going to go and try to do that. But that's why I also, I don't know. That's why I just think right now, I don't think right now is like the best spot to trade. Come trade deadline, if it's like this guy's on the market, he's been a stud all year, and the Padres can bring him in and just make their rotation nasty. Yeah, then you go for it. But I don't think you're in a mode right now where it's like, oh my God, like we got to get another. Yeah, I don't think that's where the Padres are at all. And I think signing Xander Bogaerts puts you in that spot. It's like, even if we don't have the best pitching, it's like, dude, this lineup is so dirty. And you already got 4 good arms, So it's just, and the bullpen's great. Like there's so many things that you have already that are like huge strengths that if your bottom of your starting rotation isn't that great, well, it's December. You can go and get some complementary arms to be your 4 or 5 starter, and then even keep Nick Martinez in that 6 role. And that's why I like Eovaldi. Also, I looked at Michael Wacha, and I don't know. I like Eovaldi a lot more. Eovaldi's been a little bit more like, he hasn't been quite as durable, I would say, but Walker's also had some awful years recently, outside of last year, where like Eovaldi's still pretty damn legit, and like if he's on the field, he's going to be playing well. In terms of Miley, Chase, I know you like Miley a lot. You like him as kind of coming in and being almost the 5 starter in your second lefty, right?
Yeah, that's all you need him to be. You don't need him to be anything special. Hell, if you wanted to, you can throw Wade Miley and Nick Martinez as the 5th guy and never use the bullpen. That's what I think. I mean,
yeah. I see a couple good comments here. So I see that we should call the Padres the San Diego shortstops. I mean, half the squad is a shortstop at this point, so I like that. Devin asked, did you guys know we got back Anderson Espinoza? You did see that, right, Chase? I thought you were there with
Yes,
that
we
one.
were talking about it in the group chat. They're like, see, Chase, you don't have to be mad. I'm like, I'm still mad just because of the principle of the trade. You don't trade a 10 prospect away for Jake Marisnik, who got, 5 at-bats?
Dude, oh, man. I loved it, like, when we were looking at, like, what was it, top center fielders, he was, like, one of the guys, because it was like, dude, there's no center fielders available outside of, like, a couple
I still
names.
wouldn't put him top 10.
Yeah. No, yeah. Dude, I am happy that we got Anderson Espinoza. I wonder what they think. I wonder what they're going to try to do with him. He pitched a little bit last year, right, on the Cubs? I want to say he did,
he
right?
pitched a little bit in the majors. I think he started a game and pitched like 4 innings. I wonder if Ruben Niebla can do anything with them. I think he still has some pretty good off speed. I don't think his fastball is anywhere where it's used to be. I think he's like 94, 95 compared to topping out at 100 he used to be. I think he's going to be maybe like John Wilkes Booth just said, he's going to be a bullpen arm.
Yeah, I think so too. It would be an intriguing guy to have. It's cool. I think he's just a cool guy to have back in the building too. I mean, he's had a rough career getting Pedro Martinez comps, and then it's like, oh, you're gonna get hurt and
Injury
get hurt
after
and get hurt. It's rough. So maybe you never know. I mean, I'm also like I really wonder what they do with them, because you see a lot of guys that get hurt and then like they come back and they just like completely change their game. Maybe we see something like that with him. It always feels a lot better that you have Ruben Niebla in the building though with any of these arms that you add, and I think that's another reason too when we look at getting a top end arm like a guy like Shane Bieber, for instance. Yeah, you don't got to do that. Like you don't have to go and get him. So I think that is interesting there. But let's go through a couple more like questions and stuff that we got in the comments, and I think we'll probably head out after that. But I don't know. Is there anyone? Oh, Pierce Johnson got signed. You saw that, right? To the Rockies.
To the Rockies.
Dude, he's a sad guy
I
to see.
really
Though.
wanted him back.
I
wanted him
like
back.
Pierce a lot. It just kind of becomes to the point where it's like you got so many guys where like Pierce Johnson was like kind of like barely on the roster at one point, but then at other points in the season he was like one of your best relievers, so he was kind of crazy last year to kind of be like, yeah, Pierce is our only guy pitching well right now, and then it was like, well, now we got a lot of arms, so I think that one was kind of coming. Someone was talking about Tim Hill. Is Tim Hill a free agent?
I don't think he's a free agent, but he might be out there next year.
Yeah. Here's.
Oh, did we lose Matt? Oh, I think we lost Matt. Let me bring it real quick. I think Matt's internet may have just died for a second. We're gonna get that. I'm gonna answer that Tim Hill question for you right now. Or not. It doesn't want to pop up on Spotrac. So far, all I can find is that he's on a 1-year, 596. Nope, that was last year. What is his contract details? Is it this one?
All right, just a heads up, I might sound like a robot or something right now.
Yeah, I'm currently looking for Tim Hill's contract, which for some reason is very difficult to find.
Honestly, I'm pretty confident that he's back because he was doing something like in San Diego for like some event or something recently. I saw. So
yeah,
I don't know
so he signed a 1-year, $1.325 million deal, so $1,325,000 for the year.
Okay, yeah. Mike M just commented that as well. So, last to do because I know that my stuff is going to be going ridiculous. Like I said, guys, I don't know what's going on with the Wi-Fi. So, last thing to bring up, where is it? Devin asked Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff as potential options. Dude, I have looked at the idea of what price would be for Burns, and that is the easiest no I've ever seen. Have you seen like how much it's supposed to cost to get him?
No, I haven't.
It's crazy, dude. Talking about like let's go and Merrill and like a lot of prospect capital to go get Brandon Wood. I don't think it makes any sense.
So, if you guys are wondering, Matt is trying to contact us through Bumblebee's radio. That is why he's cutting out so much. He's trying to find the right frequency. Um, yes, we may need to spot him with some internet. For some have switched. I don't know what it is, but I'm very glad this happened. Normally, I'm in Matt's situation where, it looks like you're recording on an iPod in the early 2000s. But hey, I'm crystal clear right now. I could be happy. Um, so what I caught from that was you said it was going to be Dylan Lesko, Merrill, and the top of prospects for Woodruff, right? Uh, I don't know. I like Corbin Burns better. That guy is just ridiculous. The stuff that he has, the control over the guy, the control he has is ridiculous. I would probably go for Burns over Woodruff, but um, okay. Well, Matt's internet is limiting us, so I think we're gonna call it a night. We'll probably do this again later. I actually have the Sunday off, so we might do a little live stream before, just kind of like NFL stuff. If you guys are interested in that, so that'll be all. Everybody have a nice night. Thank you for joining us.